So, 2 winters ago, I discovered a wonderful little skating pond. We got to go a few times a week for several weeks during that winter. But this past February, the pond only managed to freeze well enough for just 3 days of skating. Of course, this is just a stark but tiny example from my own life. It's not just the pond or the ice storm we had last winter or the fires whose smoke choked whole swaths of North America this summer. 2023 is gifting us with some weird weather, and it is turning out to be the hottest year on record after a string of record breaking years. Now, it's easy to see the massive scope of a problem like climate change and despair. It's easy to allow our myriad spectacular failures to overtake all of the many small but important successes that we have had over the past decades, as well as the calamities we haven't managed to avoid. It's easy and maybe even natural to allow the negative to outweigh the positive, to not see the steps we have already climbed, our focus resting only on the monumental nature of that massive staircase ahead of us. But while the statistics we have are most definitely alarming and the examples we have are frightening, respected climate scientists are starting to notice the meaningful progress we are making. They're starting to notice that the decades of warnings that they have been putting out there have actually been taken on board by climate first responders and local governments across our country and throughout the world. Dr. Kate Marvel recently wrote an op-ed in the New York Times entitled, "I'm a climate scientist. I'm not screaming into the void anymore." She and several others recently authored the National Climate Report, it was just released a couple of weeks ago, and she has also written several reports for the UN. And while wildfires and floods have become more common and storms have strengthened just as predicted, scientists writing this most recent report also noticed for the first time some real glimmers of hope. The cost of wind energy has gone down by 70% in the last decade, and solar has gone down 90%. 80% of our new electricity is now generated by renewable energy. Our country's greenhouse gas emissions are falling while our GDP and population continue to grow. Our emissions aren't falling fast enough, but the fact that they are falling and no longer rising means that we've potentially turned a meaningful corner. If we can continue to do the right things, or perhaps even accelerate our pace. Moreover, the report Dr. Marvel and her colleagues just released show that it's possible, though not certain, that if our emissions fall fast enough, we could avoid ever reaching 2 degrees of average warming, which would help us to avoid some of the worst outcomes of climate change that have been predicted. And if we work to implement more widespread changes more quickly, we could really see things turn around in our own lifetimes and not just decades and decades into the future. I hope that Dr. Marvel's work is seen widely and not just because it's factually important. Considering the ramifications of climate change is enough to give anyone a sense of vertigo, and just showing what is possible offers a real and essential sense of hope in a context that is often met with total despair. The apocalyptic vision Mark gives us on this first Sunday of Advent is a jarring departure from a season that is typically dominated by things that give comfort. And while I admit that I do love hot chocolate and cider and Christmas cookies and light displays, but one of the reasons I love Advent is because I recognize that the world is longing for meaningful change, and the Advent season is full of texts and hymns and prayers that put this longing into words. In our common religious language, apocalypse has come to mean the end of the world. But actually, an apocalypse is an unveiling. It's a time when the barriers between heaven and earth grow thin and we see truths that would otherwise remain hidden or that we might otherwise deny. Humans are allergic to change even when it's good. For those of us who are comfortable enough Mark's apocalyptic vision for the arrival of sudden, irreversible change might be truly uncomfortable, but it's after suffering, and perhaps even in response to suffering, that Jesus comes here to be with us, risking safety and power and incarnation in the midst of suffering, risking closeness to pull us out of our despair. Mark Allen Powell writes, "The world as we know it projects pessimistic outcomes, but that world belongs to God and it can be changed. It will be changed, and changed so radically that people will someday speak of a time when heaven and earth passed away." It's not unreasonable to ask why it's worth our time to consider texts that are thousands of years old. What could they possibly have to say that's relevant to us today? At its best, the function of religion is not to control, but to give us a sense of the connection we experience with God's beloveds across time and space, knowing that we are not the first people to have experienced difficulty. It can give us a framework for hope in the midst of despair. But so often, religion can fall into mere positivity and shallow optimism, a veil that quickly falls when we see the truth that the world is, in fact, a broken place and wonder where God could possibly be within it. But optimism is not the function of religion. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes, "Religious faith is not positive thinking, is not naive optimism, it is not a matter of seeing the world as we would like it to be and then believing that mere wishing or praying will make it so. God never promised that the world would get better of its own accord." Faith means seeing the world exactly as it is and yet not giving up the belief that it could be otherwise, if we are ready to act with others to make it so. Faith is realism that has been touched by hope, and hope has the power to transform the world. End quote. God never promises that life will be easy, but Jesus proclaims heaven and earth will pass away, but my word will never pass away. We wait expectantly, impatiently, and in hope, knowing that God has chosen to come to us to experience life with us. And there's nothing we can do to keep God from being with us here and now. Amen.